What would Whiterun from Skyrim look like at a true-to-life scale? That's a good question. Well, I was wondering it too, so I painted it for 60 hours so I could figure that out. Check it out. So what does true-to-life or like lore-accurate size actually mean? I want to keep the final piece as closely recognizable to the game as possible, like honoring the style, trying to keep the intention behind the choices the designers made, but I still want it to be a somewhat plausible medieval city. Same shape, same environment, but like more than 15 buildings. The question is, how much bigger? For that, I need to get like a ballpark population. The whopping 74 people who live here in game represent the biggest city in the province, so I started by looking for the medieval populations of major real-life cities. Skyrim is based on the Nordic countries, so I started there. I chose the year 1200 kind of arbitrarily as a vaguely high Middle Ages period before the Black Death. Here's the first problem. The largest cities in this area were like 1,000 to 3,000 people at most, but that doesn't feel quite right. Whiterun's supposed to have been a major trading hub and part of a continent-spanning empire for hundreds of years, so I tried out some other medieval examples. The largest cities in Western Europe at this time were 40 to 150,000. Whiterun is the largest city in Skyrim, but Skyrim is also rural as hell, so I'm going to aim for like 10 to 15,000. Medieval cities were truly small, so I'm walking a fine line between making this feel accurately Nordic without the final product being underwhelming. Okay, we have a number, but how does this become a place? What does 15,000 people look like? If you thought the last bit was over the top for a painting, just wait. Using old maps, I roughed out the area of medieval cities, using Paris for a large estimate and this Dutch town for something closer to the population I'm aiming for. Unlike most medieval cities, Whiterun is very spread out. The buildings aren't wall to wall, and there's a significant amount of farmland within the city limits. It's more congruent with smaller Viking villages, or obviously Rohan, which it's based off of. So to fit a few thousand people in a cityscape that mirrors this, I'm going to have to err on the larger side. I'm going to say target area within the city walls of 0.4 square miles. Great, more numbers. Here's my very stupid plan. Find a place on Earth that looks kind of like Whiterun Hold, plot a 0.4 square mile circle, and then overlay this map onto it so we have the right shape and scale. That way I'll have a base to paint over that's as accurate as possible. We're looking for anywhere on Earth that has a rocky promontory over rolling plains. When I tell you I wasted so much time on this, I can't even describe. Turns out it's kind of hard to find a place that doesn't exist. Obviously, I started in the Nordics. Denmark too flat, Norway too forested. I found a few hills in Sweden I thought would work, but they weren't like right. For a long time, I was convinced somewhere in the Badlands of South Dakota would be my best bet. Then I tried New Zealand, but it wasn't cooperating. Finally, I pretty much arbitrarily settled on this hill near the village of Dunstop Bridge in the UK. It's about the right height, and there are buildings I can use as size reference, so I drew the circle, threw Whiterun on top of it, cut out the castle, Dragon's Reach, and scaled it relative to the buildings in the village. I think the in-game size of the building isn't too far off, but I did scale it up a bit. Using this cool 3D model map I found online, I decided on this angle here. So taking that angle and trying to recreate it on my busted-ass Google Earth view gave me this. Then I combined that with some of the important topography and building layout from the 3D model and ripped random ground textures from Google Earth, warping and bending them to try to get a base that made sense. This is a big trust the process moment, which is funny because I've never done this process like ever before. Rocks from New Zealand, a mountain from Switzerland. If you look closely, you can actually tell that this looks awful, but I was actually closing in on something I could work off of. 90% of this is about to get covered, but it helps me get a feel for the landscape. And in grayscale with my guiding sketch, this is the first time I started to actually see the city somewhere in there. Now I just have to carve it out. In a rare good idea, I added these cloud shadows. I think they really make the landscape feel massive. This painting is as much about the context of the city as it is about the city itself, and I love how small it feels huddled up against this rocky hill. Pre-modern cities were kind of these messy, fragile miracles, and I think this captures that pretty well. I honestly didn't think I'd end up drawing every house by hand. I thought I'd figure out some way to copy and paste or simplify, but I'm a psycho, so here I am starting with all the roofs. Then it was time for color. You can also see I had to redraw all those roofs again because I did the math and I was only on track for 2,000 to 3,000, so I had to scale it much down. I'm going off like a rough 10 people per building. Yeah, medieval times sucked. This upper area is wealthier and older than the Plains district down here, so I've spaced out the buildings more and made them larger on average. Originally, I wanted to keep most of the buildings standalone, but I ended up compromising with wall-to-wall blocks near the commercial heart of the city. I figure the standalone buildings are more traditionally Nord or Nordic, while the denser sections represent the commercial and cultural influences of the empire, which is more Western European. I added these red-roofed buildings to represent structures directly built or ordered by the imperial government. This castle, which I based off a Teutonic castle, I think in Poland, and this more Cyrodiilic style temple for the garrison based off these churches in Lithuania, whatever. This square, and also some renovations of the city barracks. As I add detail, you'll notice out here the start of old city walls. I put these here to imply that the ancient city was much larger. I also imagine the city was once much more spread out and was designed to have more of its agriculture within the walls. I kept this area free of farms because all these old cellars and walls from the abandoned section of the city would make plowing the land like pretty much impossible. And I also tried to make that true in other generally rocky areas. I dotted little villages across the landscape as well, just slowly covering up the base layer one detail at a time. And after nearly a week of adding houses, trees, textures, paths, caravans, waterfalls, and tombs, I was finally closing in on the end. This little temple district doesn't really exist in the game, so I designed it based off ancient Nord ruins, trying to be intentional about the architectural style. I mostly used stave churches and scaled up longhouses, kind of synthesized as reference. I also chilled out these mountains with more grassy slopes so the terrain change wasn't like so extreme. And of course, what would Skyrim be without a dragon? And his shadow. And finally, after well over 60 hours, plumes of smoke rising off the chimneys, a clean label and signature, and it's done. There is so much in this painting. If you can think about it or see it, I've thought it through. Like down to every backyard. I don't know what I'm doing. I've combed over like every inch, so much that I can't really show it all here. If you want to see it for yourself, check out the form in my bio for a print. Thanks for watching, and I'm gonna do something else now.